My guest in today's RedTech Briefing is Abhishek Sen. He's the co-founder and CEO of a company called NumberEight. Many of you, I'm sure, like myself, haven't heard of this company. It's starting to make waves, though, because ultimately I got to know about them because I was speaking to one of our peer network radio broadcaster in Germany, and he said, "Hey, are you aware that this company is doing some really interesting things?" And I said, "Well, I better check them out." So I did a bit of background check, and it is fascinating what you're doing. Abhishek, thank you for joining me here on the RedTech Briefing. Let's start with
Lovely
the
to meet you, Omar.
backstory. Good to meet you as well. Let's start with the backstory. So I know it's a startup company. Something triggered an idea for you that there is a problem to solve. Before we get into what it is that you do,
Sure.
what was that moment?
Sure. So this is in the middle of my master's thesis. I was doing my master's thesis in the Netherlands at TU Delft. And the thesis was around, I was trying to figure out what is a topic that I can actually do. Because as a master's thesis, you're trying to figure out, okay, what is a research topic usually. And I was working out in the gym, and it literally happened that, okay, you at the gym, you listen to music. And I'm trying to find the right playlist on my phone with my sweaty hands. Okay, which one do I select to motivate me to have a really good workout? And at that moment, it's like, okay, why isn't the device doing this for me? I'm trying to listen to music on my phone. The question was, why isn't the device automatically recommending me a playlist so I can have a really good workout? And that triggered a thought, okay, yes, it should be doing this. I mean, that time was 2015, 2016. The device has all the capabilities in order for it to basically automatically do that for me. And that's what I ended up doing the thesis on, automatic playlist curation based on context, based on, what I, the individual as a user, am doing at a given point in time. And that curiosity sparked the thesis and then the startup and everything. And here we are today after quite a bit of time. But then, it's just sometimes these things take time in terms of, taking things from research to industry and to commercialization. There's a bit of a journey in that.
And the important word, of course, is context. It was what you were doing at a particular moment. You found your media choice not relevant to what you were doing. And that's pretty much the kernel of NumberEight.
That is absolutely the kernel.
And tell us.
Yeah, that is actually the kernel. Absolutely. So from that point on, we decided, this kernel, as you're talking about, the context is such a powerful thing. A lot of content recommendations still today, we see it on news outcasts, Facebook, to everything is based on past behavior, but not on what you're doing right now. So the general trend has been, I need to learn everything about you, the individual, your entire listening behavior, before I can give you something relevant. But what's often, if not often, most of the time it's overlooked is the idea of what is relevant for you in the moment that you're engaging with content. And that is what context gives you the power of. And that's what we do at NumberEight. We are basically a contextual intelligence company that uses sensors and mobile devices to say, what is Abby doing at a given point in time? Am I working out? Am I working at home? Am I relaxing at my friend's place, without having to compromise your identity and your privacy? And that's what we do
So this is an important thing you just said, because you started by saying, what is Abby doing at this? But actually, it doesn't know that it's Abby. That's important.
No, that's very important. And this has been there in academia for a very long time. If you look at any kind of context recognition, it's there from the late 90s. And from that point on, this is before privacy became a thing to talk about in mainstream media. Even at that time, researchers were always talking about, okay, we can do all of this, but how do we do this without compromising privacy? We see the early papers. It's always been there. So it's just that now it's up and center in everyone's face. You see the billboards on Apple, from Apple, privacy equals iPhone. And it's consumers, we're aware, more and more aware what is happening with the data, or even asking questions about it. So I think it's a very relevant time to balance this question of personalization while not compromising privacy.
So give me a concrete example of how this improves, how this supports the business case for radio owners around the world.
Absolutely.
Let me try and understand, what would happen in a particular situation. Can you paint a picture? Let's do that. Let's paint a picture in words.
Absolutely. If you think about it, radio advertising, the radio business has primarily been ads driven for the longest time that you can think of. It's an ads funded business. So, and day part targeting is not new. This is not new. So we're essentially saying people's behaviors have changed. So context, as with audio, we listen to audio throughout the day. When we listen to, when you wake up in the morning, when you're going to work, when you're working out the gym, when you're having drinks with friends, all these different moments are different engagement points. So what we do is that our contextual targeting options are essentially premium targeting capabilities for radio advertisers to tap into, instead of just a vanilla time-based targeting, which can be so inaccurate, and you really have no feedback in terms of what is the user actually doing to give you the most maximal ROI for the money that you're putting into the ad spots.
So does your technology help advertisers serve different advertising to people doing specific things? So, I at 9 a.m, I might be cooking up a storm.
Yep.
So I'm in the kitchen,
Sure.
but somebody else is at gym, and
Yep.
then the third person is in their car commuting.
Exactly.
On their way to work.
What you just mentioned is the exact problem with if you just use time-based targeting.
Yes.
Time-based targeting, it doesn't understand these differences, but context understands it, because context is at an individual level. So you're probably at home, I'm probably going to work, someone else is working out at the gym. All these three are not enjoying content in the exact same way that a radio advertiser might think. But when you offer radio advertisers the targeting capability, that you can actually target people when they're working at the gym, and that's it. When they have that option and the capability, they can charge advertisers a lot more from a premium as a CPM. If you're cost per listen, etc. You can definitely, and that's what we are. That's how we are positioning it in the market as well, and that's how our our partners are positioning it as a premium targeting capability to maximize the efficiency, to maximize the power of the ads themselves.
So am I getting a different ad
Yep.
because I'm in the kitchen than the people who are at gym?
Yes, that is the outcome.
And how do you make that? How do you do that? How do you
So
know?
we are.
I think you said the privacy is protected, but how do you know that a particular band of people are at home versus a particular group is at gym versus a particular group is in a car or some public transport on their way to work?
Very interesting. So that's what our technology really does. So we use a host of sensors on our smartphones. And there's a whole bunch of them today: accelerometers, gyroscope, compass, brightness, things that we don't even know. Like, for example, when we change our phone from landscape to portrait mode, what's happening? It's the accelerometer saying, oh, you're going from landscape to portrait mode, so we can play games or we can watch a video. That's what's happening under the hood. So we use these same sensors in our smartphones today, combine them intelligently through our on-device AI algorithms to say things like, okay, this app is actually commuting right now. This app is working out at the gym. This app is relaxing at home. That's what's happening. So you're able to tap into real moments without having to know, okay, is this Omar? Is this Abby? Is this someone else? And then on the basis of this, you can also build up habits. So you can say, oh, because this person is working out every Monday, for example, they might be a jogger, or they might be a fitness enthusiast, or they might be a frequent shopper. And radio, again, it's very powerful because you're listening to radio and audio in general throughout the day. It's not just in one moment. Just the nature of the format, really. So it's a very rich format. We can really understand what the user is actually doing and give them a really good experience.
So let's just hone in, for example, on the jogger. The technology, the back end, under the hood stuff, knows that a group of people, a person is moving at a particular pace. Just talk that through. How do you know?
Would you like to see a demo of that?
Yeah, do you want to... It's a great idea. Okay, show us the demo, and then
I can talk you through what's actually happening through it. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Let me know if you. Okay, cool. So this is a demo of it's an internal app. Now our app is our software solution is actually something called a software development kit. It sits inside existing apps, so it's not an app on its own. Imagine the software, our software sitting under the hood in your mobile apps. Now, our smartphone today has a whole range of sensors, as I was talking about. You have accelerometer, gyroscope, magnetometer. You see these numbers changing quite a bit on the screen right now.
Yeah.
Screen brightness. They don't mean too much by this on their own. What we do is that we combine them intelligently on the device itself to say something like, well, you know what? I'm stationary right now. I'm in an indoor environment. The device is on a surface, as you can see over here. It's a commercial facility, and the overall situation is that I'm working. Now, if you keep your eyes on the device position, I'll pick this phone up in my hand, and you should see it go to in my hand right now. This is live in the moment targeting capability without knowing that this is Abhishek. It has no idea of who I am. And this is what we call live contextual targeting. Now, let's say we work a lot. I run a software startup, so I'm obviously working a lot. So as I use this radio app, or let's say this app over and over again, it'll build up certain habits. And that's what we call audiences. As I build up these habits, you're going to see things like it's put me into an audience of a desk jobber, an outdoor explorer, a sportive, a walker, and so on and so forth, and also an early riser. So it uses the habits, it goes from sensors, so raw sensors over here, to live moments of what you're doing right now. And then on the basis of that, you can actually layer that on with these are the audiences. So that's what we call, that's the power of context and context-based audiences, where you can really tap into what the user is doing right now. And also based on these real habits. So it's not about, okay, I said something on a survey. That's why I need to hear, a lot of data targeting is done. A lot of advertising is done just based on survey data. It can be highly inaccurate. This is real behaviors. It's not something that I wish to do. If I don't run or if I don't walk, I will not be a walker. So how an advertiser would do this is that they'd work with our partners, and then they'll tap into these targeting capabilities to offer to their advertisers. Hey, listen, would you like to target, as a brand, for example, would you like to reach people when they are commuting? Or would you like to reach people who are joggers, but you don't want to reach people when they're jogging? You want to reach people post-workout.
Sure.
So you can do both.
So do you then provide the radio company, the radio broadcaster, while assessing their audience's behaviors and habits, as you say, you build up a profile of particular groups. And I saw in your demo that you have labels for different types of audiences. Do you then start to give them clusters and say there are so many risers versus so many?
Exactly.
In terms of the categories,
there's two kinds of insights. So one from an actual targeting. So every ad, when you have to play an ad, you have an ad request that goes out. We'll be appending these parameters, if you call them, in that ad request that goes out. So every radio broadcaster would have an ad partner, like a technology ad partner that they work with, the likes of Triton, AdSwift, TargetSpot, Global DAX, etc. We would be working with these partners to add these parameters into each ad request that goes out. So when an advertiser buys into an ad spot, they'll have these capabilities already embedded. They'll say, oh yeah, I see a jogger. I'm going to target joggers. Oh, I see walkers. I see early risers. So maybe they need something about meditation, or they have specific nutritional habits, or you can think, that's a very creative job, as you can imagine.
Sure.
And that's what has gotten a lot of brand advertisers very excited, because all of a sudden it's not just about time. It's not just about what I've said in a survey. It's about actual behaviors and what's happening when they're engaging with the content. So advertisers really lining up right now, because also on the flip side, there's no concept of identity, as you probably saw already. It doesn't know who is Abhishek over here. There is no understanding of that, and it doesn't need to. So that's how a radio broadcast, and of course, there's an element of aggregated insights that the broadcaster will also get, because they'll say, oh, you know what? 50% of my users are listening to rock music when they're commuting. Interesting. And then and there's an other element of personalization of the content as well that can go with that.
So as we keep reminding ourselves in this conversation, this is not an incursion or an invasion of privacy because you don't know who the individual is. But you think there's any potential for backlash here because people say, well, I don't even want you to know what I'm doing. But I guess it's because you don't know who I am. So
it definitely comes down to the value exchange.
Right.
At the end of the day, there's this question, we talk about this paradox of personalization and privacy. anytime personalization by itself is a privacy invasion, because if you just talk about personalization, because you cannot personalize something without knowing something about the person.
Yes.
That that doesn't make sense. So, but what we're doing is that it's separating the individual from what that actual data is. So there is no, because that's what the entire mobile ad industry and pretty much the entire digital ad industry is really up in arms about. Oh, this identity piece is very important to serve anything relevant. The point is that it's not very relevant. I mean, sure, if you can get more and more with consent, it's great. But it's not the be all and end all of advertising if you don't know the identity, because there's so much more information that can be used to tailor the message to the individuals to make it more relevant for them in the moment.
Yes.
And not just, oh, I need to collect 5 years of your data and life history to maybe hopefully give you something relevant, because that's been the trend for the last 5 to 10 or even more years in the entire ad industry. And that's why context is making a comeback right now in audio, in mobile advertising, and pretty much the entire ad space. How and why? So they call it, it's like the contextual targeting comeback. That's what's happening right now in the market. So we're just surfacing this up.
So in supporting radio broadcasters around the world, I would think that in order for them to take advantage of your proposition, it's essential for them to shift as many of their listeners onto mobile devices, right? Because that's really the trick here. Without that, if they're just listening on FM radio, this is not going to. Yeah,
no, this is mobile in absolution only. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So are there specific markets that this is a better solution for? Is it? I mean, I know that a lot of people listen to radio on their mobile phones in India, but maybe they're not. Those are radio phones with FM tuners. Is that a better market for this technology than, say, the US or the UK?
It really depends. As you rightly pointed out, a lot of audio consumption in the Western markets happens through other audio services that have podcasts and music and video and audio. So you have the major streaming players. So radio has a little bit more difficult time competing for that ear time. We call it screen time, but in this case, it's audio, so it's ear time. But in emerging markets, because they might not be yet established, radio still plays a very prominent role. So it's a no-brainer for me, because right now today, I like to use this word, is money is today left on the table by radio broadcasters, because you're not tapping into what the devices are actually saying. That's what's happening today, because you're not taking advantage of context, which is so powerful, not just from a monetization, which is of course commercially, I mean, that is, it has to be commercially viable, but also from engaging with users to give them something interesting. Like, for example, we've had use cases. Maybe I want to deliver a specific broadcast in the morning, as opposed to, like news in the morning versus sports in the evening. But that's different for different people, just based on my behaviors. I could be listening to Eye of the Tiger, Rocky, when I'm meditating. I don't, but maybe I will. As opposed to you, if you listen to Eye of the Tiger when you're working out, who knows? But it's that understanding of, okay, what are different people? And so there's an element of advertising revenues and also giving a really good experience. And they don't have to compromise on each other.
Do you, as somebody who works in this space and spends a lot of time, and you did your master's thesis, do you think that the sorts of clampdowns we're seeing around the world now on issues of, lack of permission, people don't know that their information, their data is being used, to monetize them. Do you think that as they clamp down further and further, it becomes more and more difficult for companies like Google, Facebook, who are, big data harvesters and users? Do they pivot in a particular way? What do you anticipate if you look at the road ahead?
Yeah, I was just on a gaming forum yesterday. There were very similar question, and they're talking about, what is the future of advertising? And that wasn't even the panel, the future of advertising. And it comes down to, at the heart of advertising, the internet is built on the back of advertising. So, and identity is at this epicenter of that. So identity is challenged today, because consumers are saying, hey, why do you want to know who I am and where is my data? So there's a lot of work that's happening right now under the hood, with a lot of government regulations coming in, where they're saying that, okay, consumers should be in control of when they say delete my data, just that data flow, that needs to be seamless. Say, hey, I want to delete my data, so delete it. If you want to use my data, okay, what am I getting in return for this? The consent is very important. And second is, don't just harvest raw data with the hope of someday somehow giving something back to the user. Because that has been the trend. This whole big data or cloud computing era that has been for the last 10 years or so, it's essentially been about how do we get a lot of data into the cloud warehouses. But then that's been sitting there for a long time. No one knows where the data is, what it's going to be used for. But context does is it allows you to serve up, use only the relevant pieces, because that will be used to serve something relevant in the moment to the consumer. So it's not just about collecting a whole bunch of data. It's about, can I deliver something relevant? So for example, for our audiences, right, we have a decay period after I think at the end of 6 months, it just goes out because it's not relevant anymore. My behaviors within 6 months is going to change. There's no point in keeping this data. There's zero need for it.
Are cookies on the way out? Is that not?
They are, right? 2023. Google. They have to delay because they don't have a solution yet in place. On the mobile side, it's already happened. So Apple, when they had the pop-up coming up on iOS, you have that about 25% of people are opting into the IDs being tracked. So that means 75% of people have opted out. That pretty much means that ID piece cannot be used. That's having some major implications on the mobile advertising industry. And that definitely affects radio broadcasts. If you have any kind of mobile assets, mobile apps, it's going to affect.
And then does that mean this becomes what you're doing, the contextual piece becomes
very powerful, very, very powerful, very powerful, because we see this as a rise. And there's a lot of things sort of falling in line. In computing theory, there's a thing called edge computing or on-device computing. That is happening. It's a wave. This is happening. We're just at the birth of that. What that means is you do all the processing, everything on the device. You don't send any of the computation or the raw numbers to the cloud somewhere to do some cloud computations. That's one wave. Second wave is the privacy awareness that's happening. Consumers, we're just becoming more aware of what's happening with our data. And the third piece that's happening is that you're seeing the advertising industry come at a crossroads to say, what, shoot, we can't rely on identity to serve up relevant content. So these are the crossroads, and it's a perfect storm to drive this forward. To all these three are just coming together to drive forward contextual advertising. And that's something that radio advertisers should definitely tap into. And we're seeing that here in the UK, in Australia, in the States as well. So yeah.
Now, obviously, because your company is relatively new startup, you don't really, at the moment, have case studies yet, but you're heading that way. So how long before I can do a follow-up interview to ask you to actually present data to show how well your technology has worked to actually boost revenues for a particular, we don't have to mention the client, but we want to understand that ultimately this is boosting revenues.
Absolutely, because that's at the end of the day, that's proof is in the pudding, right? It has to prove some commercial value. So I'd say in a 3 to 4 months time, we'll have, because we are already running pilots. So in UK, in Australia, and some in the States, one in Germany. So it's across the board, different propositions in terms of different positioning, because it depends on how it can position in the market. But end of the day, contextual targeting is a premium opportunity for advertisers to tap into ad slots without compromising their privacy.
In terms of the pilots, have you learned something that surprised you, that made you have to change? Very
One
interesting.
thing that came up very interesting was recently at a conversation with an Australia broadcast. I can't say the name who. We thought, okay, advertisers would need some education of what is context. We're completely taken back. They're waiting in line to pilot. They want to be first to market. They want to try this out because this is amazing for them. Forget NumberEight. It's just the ability to target people in the moment and based on their real behaviors is amazing for them. They're just waiting in line for us to go live. So I'm very excited.
And that was specific to Australia, that particular.
This is in Australia. This was coming out of Australia. So
Okay. They're different down under. What just to round up, what value we've heard you talking about all the value that you can create for a broadcaster or a radio owner. What kind of value does what you do bring to listeners in general?
This is why NumberEight was started. I want to get the most I want to get the most relevant playlist in the moment. Content recommendation.
Mm-hmm.
That's at the heart of all of this. Yeah. So context will power content. That's for ads, because ads is also content. It's not something new.
Sure.
It's also content. So content can be playlists, radio stations, events. So that's at the heart of this. So as a listener, you want to give an engaging experience, not just random material that's not relevant for me. If I still go to my playlists on, I have to go and pick and choose. There's 25 different playlists that I have to pick from as a listener, purely. Why do I have to do that?
Mm.
And you call me lazy, but that's pretty much, that's what, but this is what a device is for. I don't want to spend time doing things that the device already should be doing. It is pretty smart, but we're just making notes on our phone right now. It's not that, we can do a lot more with that.
Yeah. So there's an exciting, as you see it, an exciting future ahead for
very
how
exciting.
we consume based
consume,
on
because
what we're doing in the moment. Yeah.
Context-aware computing. We'll basically see more and more where our devices understand, and where the rudimentary tasks that we do in our day-to-day life, it will be offloaded to devices, but we are in control of what we want to start something.
Abhishek Sen from NumberEight. Thank you very much for your time. This was illuminating, insightful. It's new what you're doing, obviously, and it's really interesting to learn more about it. And as I said, and that's why I asked the question, I'm going to be back in 3 or 4 months with the RedTech team. Are really keen to understand how those case studies work out and whether you can actually do something for radio revenue, because we know around the world there's a lot of pressure right now, and a lot of the share has gone to digital media, and perhaps it's solutions like yours that can try to claw back some of that and maybe even grow new revenue opportunities.
Absolutely. Yep. Lovely
Thank
to
you
meet
for your
you,
time.
Omar.
And you.
Thanks again.
Thanks for your time.
Cheers. Bye-bye.